next on CTN News.
So we just want to make people aware that these scams exist, these people exist.
Slam the scam. Local utility companies team up to educate customers about the growing number of scams targeting Minnesotans. Plus, a Twin Cities coach accused of kidnapping and sexually assaulting 2 teens from Andover. But first...
And then I thought about our daughters and what am I going to do? What am I going to say to them?
A Coon Rapids family remembers a father and husband who died from the Ebola virus. That topped CTN News this Friday, October 3rd, 2014. Thanks for joining us. The first case of Ebola in the United States was confirmed this week, according to the Centers for Disease Control.
The news comes just 2 months after a Coon Rapids man was the first American citizen to die from the disease. CTN's Joe Nelson attended last weekend's memorial service for Patrick Sawyer and joins us now with more. Joe?
Yes, Stephen Karen. Patrick Sawyer leaves behind a wife and 3 young daughters. The day brought tears and inspiration to end Ebola through education and protection. As a Liberian diplomat, Patrick Sawyer was on a mission to help his home country, sacrificing time away from his wife DeConti and their 3 young daughters in Coon Rapids.
He goes, I'm doing this for us and I have to do this. And so I supported him and it was hard.
Things got harder. Earlier this year, Ebola hit West Africa, where Patrick had been working.
I really didn't understand how serious it was.
In July, DeConti came to understand the disease all too well when Patrick's sister died without warning. And 2 weeks later, a series of phone calls changed her life.
She called back not too long ago and said, yeah, he's definitely in Nigeria. He's definitely in the hospital being quarantined, and they're thinking he may have Ebola. A phone call woke me up at 3 a.m. And that's when they told me that he died.
2 months have passed, and a memorial service was held last Saturday in Patrick's honor.
Rest in perpetual peace, my baby boy.
It's not the first time DeConti has felt such pain. She escaped Liberia's civil war at a young age, but her uncle and other loved ones did not.
The Ebola crisis reminds me of that. Like, it takes me back to the Civil War times, because it's the same being here, hearing about what's going on back home, losing loved ones. I lost my husband, losing other family members, and hearing the cries, you know, hearing the stories. But the only difference this time is that I'm not that 11-year-old girl that was helpless and then couldn't do anything. I can do something now. I can fight back. I can be a part of the solution.
In a war that cannot be won with guns or bombs, DeConti is fighting with words and gloves. After the service, she launched the COFA Foundation to offer protective materials and education to Liberians and counseling for grieving families here.
We need to come together as a global community and work together on eradicating Ebola.
We want to reach out to those families and say, we're with you. We hear you, we see you, we are you, and that it's okay to get help.
So far, more than 3,300 people have died from Ebola in this outbreak, and the CDC predicts 1.4 million could be infected by the end of January next year. For more information on how to donate or volunteer with the COFA Foundation, go to cofafoundation.org. Stephen Karen.
Thank you. Very touching story.
Thanks.
A Burnsville man is accused of kidnapping and sexually assaulting 2 Andover teens he met on an online chat website. On Thursday, 23-year-old Casey Chin was charged with 2 counts of third-degree criminal sexual conduct, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 2 counts of solicitation of a child. 2 13-year-old girls disappeared Monday night and were discovered the next morning at the home Chin shares with his parents in Burnsville. Chin, who's a youth coach, told investigators he met the girls on the website Omegle and agreed to pick them up near their homes in Andover. Bail has been set at $300,000 with conditions.
A rollover crash shut down a portion of Hanson Boulevard this week. The accident happened just after 2 Tuesday afternoon in the northbound lanes of Hanson Boulevard. Witnesses say a car driven by a 20-year-old Andover man rear-ended a car in the left turn lane at 127th Avenue. His vehicle then rolled. Fortunately, nobody was seriously injured. The driver who caused the crash told police he didn't know how the accident occurred. Northbound Hanson was closed at Main Street for a short time while emergency crews cleared the crash scene. Quite a scene outside a Coon Rapids apartment building late Thursday morning. A pickup truck parked in the lot at Colonial Estates caught fire, sending a plume of thick black smoke into the air. The fire department arrived and quickly extinguished the flames coming from the engine compartment. Nobody was hurt and no other cars or structures were damaged. The cause of the fire remains under investigation.
Senator Al Franken is joining calls for stricter safety standards for trains carrying crude oil. On Wednesday, Franken threw his support behind a new federal proposal to boost the safety of trains carrying highly volatile Bakken crude oil from North Dakota through Minnesota. He says old tank cars need to be phased out. Just last week, Governor Mark Dayton sent a letter to North Dakota, their governor urging stricter standards on the quality of the oil being shipped by the rail. Local utility companies are teaming up to keep customers from becoming the victims of scams.
This week they launched Slam the Scam, an educational campaign to raise awareness about the issue. So far this year, Conexus Energy has heard from about 40 customers who've been contacted by scam artists. Xcel Energy has reported hundreds of complaints. In many cases, a scammer calls and threatens to disconnect the customer's utility service unless he or she makes an immediate payment.
They don't just ask for payment the regular way, they ask for payment in a different way. It's different than what a utility would ask for. You know, through PayPal, they ask you to wire money. Utilities don't generally do that. And one thing to know is utilities will not disconnect you immediately. There's always a process in place.
If you think you've been targeted by a scammer, utility companies advise to simply end the conversation and slam the phone down. If you've fallen victim to a scam, you're advised to contact your local police department.
Schools across the state are continuing to work to close the achievement gap. According to data released this week by the Minnesota Department of Education, 8 Anoka-Hennepin schools have received the highest designation in the state's accountability system. Adams, Eisenhower, Hoover, Lincoln, Wilson, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. In all, 131 elementary schools across the state are designated as reward schools this year. They are among the top 15% of elementary schools, all of which receive federal funding due to high percentages of poverty. Still to come on CTN News, a search is underway for election judges.
Plus, candidates running for city council square off in a public forum this week. Also ahead, a landmark of sorts in Coon Rapids about to mark a big milestone. More on the history of the WCCO radio tower.
The county is interested in coming up with a plan, whether that's rehabilitation and use or whether that's demolition and clearing the land.
And trying to figure out what to do with the old state hospital campus in Anoka. That story coming up.
Hello, young parents.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
We are now just 1 month away from the general election.
And the city is looking for people interested in serving as election judges. In order to be an election judge, you must be eligible to vote in Minnesota and must complete a 2-hour training session. Election judges do get paid. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Election Day. For more information, call the city clerk's office at 763-767-6493.
Candidates running for several city and state offices squared off in a public forum this week. 2 candidate forums sponsored by the League of Women Voters were held Monday night at the Coon Rapids City Center. The first forum consisted of candidates running for 3 open city council seats, Mayor, Ward 3, and Ward 5. The mayoral candidates were asked about the benefit of being elected mayor.
I think you also have a little control over the agenda. You know, you can control the flow of the meeting, you can control some of the commission appointments a little bit better. And I think that's really the upside.
It takes time to do all the things that a mayor has to do, which one advantage I have is I'm retired. So I'm going to be able to work full-time, getting out there and marketing the city.
The second forum included candidates running for the State House of Representatives in Districts 36B and 37A. If you missed the forums, don't worry, we taped them and we'll be playing them back on CTN Government Channel 16 in the coming weeks.
3 historic buildings in Anoka County could get new life after a decade of crumbling and sitting empty. The buildings are located on the old state hospital campus. CTN's Bao Vang has more on the new plan to turn them into housing for veterans.
It was a beautiful campus from a distance, right on the river. Beautiful green grass.
100 years after the Anoka Asylum, later known as a state hospital, opened, the same buildings still stand. Barely. Cottages 2, 3, and 4 of the 11 structures are now owned by the county and have sat vacant for almost a decade.
The roofs have failed, and so a lot of water inside the building, and it's affected the concrete, the walls, the floors. It'll take a tremendous amount of rehab to get those buildings back in the shape they should be in for habitation.
But some are interested in trying, even though the county made the decision not to budget any more money to maintain this site after this year.
The site is ideal, really, for what we're hoping to accomplish.
Democratic State Representative Jerry Newton, who represents Coon Rapids, Blaine, and Spring Lake Park, is working with Anoka City officials to turn the buildings into housing for veterans.
We have to take care of these people. You know, they've sacrificed in many cases, and I think we have an obligation to take care of them.
Newton is proposing there be beds for the homeless, support for those dealing with PTSD, and a daycare center for families who want to drop off a loved one while they work or run errands.
The county says it will give any group until the summer of 2015 to come up with a rehab plan. But if there's no progress by the summer of 2016, it will have no choice but to demolish these buildings. Balvang, CTN News.
Anoka County estimates it will cost a total of $600,000 to demolish the buildings, as to opposed to about $15 million to rehabilitate them. Representative Newton says he plans to move forward with presenting veterans housing on the site to the county board if a survey scheduled to start in January determines a need.
A landmark of sorts in Coon Rapids has been helping the community stay informed for nearly 90 years now. On Wednesday night, the Anoka County Historical Society held a dinner to celebrate the 90th anniversary of WCCO Radio. Proceeds from the event help support the Historical Society and its programs. The radio tower didn't actually transmit a signal from Coon Rapids until March of 1925, and that signal was powerful, as nearby residents would soon find out.
But for people that lived in the neighborhood, what they always want to talk about and tell you about is how they could pick up the radio transmission on just about everything, including the radio, but just about everything else. When they picked up their phones, they could hear it coming in on the telephone. All sorts of metal things, like people said that if they could, sometimes when they put their head in the dryer in their basement, the metal from that would pick it up.
I know I stick my head in the dryer a lot. One of the first things transmitted by the tower was the inaugural address of President Calvin Coolidge. The WCCO radio antenna reaches a height of 654 feet.
Next week is Fire Prevention Week in Minnesota, which means Coon Rapids firefighters will be visiting local schools with important safety messages. Also on Saturday, October 11th, all 3 fire stations will host an open house from 10 a.m. to noon. In addition to tours, Station 1 will have 2 kitchen fire demonstrations. Station 2 will have a rollover simulator demonstration at 4 different times, and Station 3 will have fire extinguisher training along with a medical helicopter, which will land at 11 a.m.
Ben Affleck stars in a new mystery thriller out in theaters this weekend. Howie Shapiro has a preview of that and more in this week's Now Showing.
Nick Dunn, you're probably the most hated man in America right now. Did you kill your wife, Nick?
Gone Girl. With his wife's disappearance having become the focus of an intense media circus, a man sees the spotlight turned on him when it's suspected that he may not be innocent.
The hallmark of a sociopath is a lack of empathy.
People from all over this plane have simply vanished.
Chris, let me in! Chris!
Left behind. A small group of survivors are left behind after millions of people suddenly vanish and the world is plunged into chaos and destruction.
He took them to protect them from the darkest time in the history of this world.
The God my mother talked about would never do something like this. Oh my God, you're covered in blood.
Go back inside. It's not mine. It's not. Go back inside and call an ambulance right now. Go!
Annabelle. A couple begins to experience terrifying supernatural occurrences involving a vintage doll shortly after their home is invaded by satanic cultists.
There are things happening that I can't explain.
We should talk to someone.
I don't think what you're experiencing is a ghost.
I'm Howie Shapiro, and that's what's showing.
All right, a couple of intense ones this week. Thanks,
Very
Howie.
much so. Thank you, Howie, and thank you for watching. Join us again next time.